Don't take another step, that's evidence and you know it. His shoes squeaked on the cracked tile, but he didn't break stride. You don't have any claim, not after what happened. Her flashlight shook in her hand, catching the panic flickering across his face. Looks like I do, and guess what, I'm not alone this time. The metallic clang of the safe's inner door echoed off stone, sharper than any word. He ground his heel over old plaster and snapped, I'll have you out in cuffs before noon. She pressed the faded folder to her chest. Go ahead, call them, I called first. For a breath, everything froze around the shaft of lantern light. You never deserved this place. Harsh breath, trembling fists, three people staring each other down across decades of betrayal. Maybe not, but I'm standing in it now. And before any of this, before secrets scattered on cold tile, before the past cracked open, she still thought all she'd inherited was an empty ruin. The bus coughed a long, gray blur onto slats of snow pressed up against the Draymoth Transit hub. Half frozen, Marissa scuffed her sneaker against the curb, one hand jammed in the pocket of a second-hand peacoat, missing a button, ugly fleece poking out under the collar. $36 and change, a phone charger that barely worked, and the overdue notice from Three Rivers Tech crumpled at her hip. That was what she dragged with her to the rumbling lobby of this nowhere town, stuck on the southern edge of Montana farm country. Suitcase, dented, thrifted, wheels sticky with road salt. The duct tape wound tight at the handle threatened to split with every step. People breezed past, sharp with cologne and coffee, but Marissa felt invisible, a ghost with frost biting her teeth. It had been like this since she aged out of foster care, waiting, always half cold, always checking behind, waiting for the bank's next warning letter. The only fire she felt burned in her earlobes, humiliation at memories she'd rather choke than recall. Not that she had time for dread, not when every clock seemed to tick against her. She lined up at a vending machine, debated a canned soup, and settled for black coffee, wincing at how the harsh cardboard cup scalded her scarred fingers. Just as Marissa slumped into a plastic seat under flickering bulbs, her phone vibrated. Screen cracked, nearly out of battery, but the number read, Cordley and Frey, PLLC. Is this Marissa Pike? The voice was crisp, direct, a tone she'd only heard from faculty, never family. Yeah, if it's about loans, I'm doing my best, she mumbled, heart thumping hard. This isn't about loans. My name is Howard Frey, and you're listed as a beneficiary in the estate of Catherine Pike. We need your presence at a will reading, Concord, Wednesday at 10 a.m. Sorry, wait, is this a joke? She struggled to balance phone, coffee, her clammy notepad. Eyeliner became her pen of necessity, scribbling address and time in shaky cursive along the back of the red overdue slip. It's no joke, please arrive promptly, the attorney said, a metallic click ending the call like an old lock sealed between them. Marissa stared at the smudged note, wind pelting the window, heart rolling from hope to hurt to suspicion. Her grandmother, lost to the kind of family arguments that didn't make it to holiday tables, owned the derelict children's home on the north end of Clearfield. At least, she used to. Only reason they'd call me is to tie up loose ends, Marissa muttered, voice weak as she drained her cup. Always the afterthought. She pocketed the ribbon with its tarnished brass key, a childhood relic always worn against her skin, then caught the eye of a gray-haired woman across the aisle. The woman blinked, then turned away. So much for fairy godmothers. If you've ever watched someone steal what was yours and felt powerless to stop it, keep listening. Snow spat sideways at dawn as Marissa waited for the bus heading toward Concord, her own journey mapped out by bus schedules and a stale hope she tried, and failed, to smother. The route dipped past silent fields. Between dozing and watching reflections trickle across windows, she remembered the last time she'd seen her grandmother's name, scrawled in faded ink over twisted legal papers. Even back then, no one could make sense of the property's fate except maybe her uncle, gray, sharp-suited, always ducking out of holiday dinners when questions turned pointed. Be honest, Riss, she whispered to herself, teeth chattering. You're just here to smile for the cameras while they shut the door on your face. She arrived at Concord worn thin, eyes stained by sleeplessness. The office of Cordley and Frey loomed up colonial in architecture, politesse warped by the years, flagstones dull under weak sun. Inside, walnut paneling glowered at her, a lined secretary gave her frostbitten stares, and every step towards the conference room seemed wider than the last year combined. The conference room splayed with morning light glinting off glass carafes and the polo pins of those already seated. There, her cousin Alan Pike. Espresso suit, pressed lapel, jaw locked in bored attention, shining phone always in hand. At Alan's elbow, two associates, all muscle and silk ties, not a smile among them. Howard Frey barely glanced up. "Miss Pike, take a seat." Marissa scratched her scalp, peacoat collecting table crumbs, then took the chair farthest from the walnut mantel. She watched Alan lift his brow as if to say, "You're 5 minutes late." Frey shuffled parchment, voice cutting over the low hum of heater fans. Per the wishes of the late Catherine Pike, all liquid assets, securities, and family property transfer to Alan Pike, her sole executor, with one exception. Alan didn't move, but the tip of one shoe thumped once, impatient. Frey slid a small wooden box toward Marissa. "You are to receive full title to the former Clearfield Orphanage, along with any contents therein." Alan barked out a laugh. "That place, rotting timber, lead pipes, half the roof in the river. Good luck, cousin, you'll need it." The rest of the room followed with hollow chuckles, the kind that felt calibrated for a lesser bloodline. Marissa blinked fast, swallowing curses. "This box was to be delivered to you directly," Frey intoned. "Per her instructions, unread until you stand within the property itself." Marissa nodded, hands trembling as she tucked the box and legal papers to her chest. After signing her inheritance, if a crumbling orphanage, a public laughingstock, could be called that, she slipped past Alan and his cronies on her way out. Outside, the air felt knife-sharp, the morning turning metallic as Marissa popped the box. Inside, one iron key, squarish, acid-pitted, a tiny 1941 punched at the base. Alongside, a folded note ripped from stationery. The note, written in her grandmother's upright script, read, "Get there before the others. Your truth is behind walls no one sees. Trust the stories only you remember." Marissa's breath caught. The others? The key pressed a chill bruise into her palm. She closed her fist and looked toward the hazy ridge north of town. The orphanage was waiting. The ride to Clearfield was 6 stops, 2 bus transfers, and another thin night curled up on a laundromat bench. Her childhood home so close, yet always colder than a bus shelter. As the early flood of cattle trucks rumbled along Main, Marissa shouldered her pack and walked the mile out to the property, clouds darkening overhead. A lifetime ago, she'd climbed the fence across that field, daring older kids to follow. Now the grass was sharp with old ice, the brickwork listing away from itself, paint strips hanging off window sashes. A hand-lettered sign sagged, "Property condemned, keep out." Marissa paused at the warped oak doors. The iron key scraped in the lock, protesting. A small push, her breath fogging, then the doors caved in, years of stale air brushing against her cheek. A whiff damp paper spiced the metallic tang of soldered pipes. She panned her flashlight around. Inside, the orphanage loomed over her all over again, silent and somehow smaller. The stairs still moaned, a rusted wheelbarrow trapped in the entryway, a single blown glass ornament hanging above the old check-in desk. On instinct, Marissa walked the main corridor, thumbnail tracing the wainscoting. Her sneakers crackled shards of glass. Here was the first hook. The house was not as she remembered. On the right, the wainscot bowed out. The box's note rang in her head, "Trust the stories only you remember." She pressed her ear to the wall. It was hollow, some space unmapped, concealed. Heart scurrying, Marissa wrapped her fist along the panel, a dull resonance. She dropped her bag and pulled out the blunt tools she'd stuffed inside from the maintenance office, a flat pry bar and a short-handled hammer. In the dim light, she worked the seam of old paint, peeling back wainscoting. Her breath fogged the lantern as she followed the old seam, hand trembling with anticipation or exhaustion. The wood gave, dust slipping out in a slow collapse. A false wall, behind it darkness. She jammed the lantern deep into the hollow and looked inside. A corridor, a sealed door, iron and wood, standing just beyond. Her body went stiff, pulse hammering in her ears. She bit her lip and crawled forward. The iron key turned in the second lock, catching just slightly before yielding. The door hissed open, dragging decades of dust and secrecy with it. Inside, a wing frozen in time. Plaster pale and pure, sheets draped over sturdy beds, the ghost of a child's toy on the floor. Gold certificates glimmered under a glass case, next to aged bearer bonds and thick, water-warped deeds. A writing desk hunched against the far wall, a letter addressed to Marissa lying atop it in perfect script, unmarred by time. She leaned over the desk, fingers trembling, and unfolded the letter. If you're reading this, you found your way home when others wanted you lost. What I could never tell you outright is this. In 1943, the Pike Trust was stolen, hidden in plain sight. The legal heirs erased, your blood cut out by paper and greed. Only this room, sealed since the war, holds the truth. They will try to cheat you. Let them try. I trust you to do what I could not. Catherine. Her hands shook so badly the letter slipped from her grasp. The lantern's light caught against the gold certificates, promises in faded ink, stamped before Alan's name even existed in family memory. Photos paperclipped to the deed, a younger Catherine beaming, a ledger visible behind her elbow. Tucked at the bottom, a certificate of trust embossed and countersigned. For a long breath, Marissa's vision prickled, tears gone bitter by the time they threatened to fall. A creak behind her own foot or something older shifting in the boards. She recoiled, clutching the deed and letter, scanning for cameras for Alan's goons. Nothing but the hush of lost years curling behind that secret door. She photographed everything, folder, signatures, even the rusted edges of the concealed door. With a new desperation, she stuffed the deeds and certificates into her battered courier bag. The final photograph. A single, iron key in her palm over a sunken vault with her family's name. Time was running thin. The sense of threat clung close and her lips bruised as she whispered, "You trusted me, I won't let them win." The phone trembled as she pressed out the number from the lawyer's card. Local time registered as 11:51 a.m. Frey speaking. It's Marissa, I found something, I need you here, fast. And if Alan comes, tell him the cops are already involved. A silent beat, then, send me what you have right now, meet me at my office. And Marissa, be careful, they won't give up easy. She ended the call, checking the clock. Less than 2 hours until the probate hearing. Tick-tock, she murmured, stuffing her things and bracing her body against Winter's push. The walk to Frey's office sliced the skin off her hands, Montana wind snarling, biting, her stride forced through icy clumps in the sidewalk. With every footstep, the battered courier bag bumped her hip, hard with its skull of gold certificates and legal relics. A second call chirped in. Frey again, voice sharp, "Where are you?" "Half a block, find me at your side door." Inside, Frey waited at the reception with a grave-set jaw, his assistant standing by with a phone recording. Marissa dumped her haul over the conference table, knees shaking. All of this was behind a false wall in the orphanage. And look, these trust stamps, they predate the fraud. Catherine said everything was stolen. Frey peeled through pages, eyebrows jumping each time a stamp matched. "If this proves what you say," he snapped the folder shut. "Alan's probate petition won't just fall through. He'll be facing criminal exposure, possibly federal charges for what he's already transferred." A chill spilled through Marissa that had nothing to do with the wind. Her whole life, one phone call away from being renamed, realigned, rewritten. Frey's associate, a younger woman, nodded. "We need to file a temporary injunction now. They'll argue you fabricated, so we'll need photos, originals, timestamps, witnesses." Howard checked her battered phone. "It says here, the final hearing is at 2 if we deliver this now." A text rolled in. "Alan, you still in that dump, leave whatever you find." Frey's eyes met Marissa's. "They know, get in my car, you ride with me." "Call the county police too," Marissa whispered. "I filmed everything. They might try to destroy evidence." For a half-second, Frey's face cracked. "You're braver than most, let's go." Outside, his sedan skidded as he raced toward the probate courthouse. Marissa's thoughts raged. She gripped the folder, knuckles whitening, unyielding. The deadline pounded after every tick of the dashboard clock. They reached the courthouse with 8 minutes to spare. The corridors echoed, all marble and old dust. Frey briefed her in a hush as they paced. "You only need to show that your material is credible and was discovered on the property. I'll do the rest, so will the judge. Just expect Alan to fight back. He thinks this is all his." Marissa looked down at her sneakers and thought, for the 100th time, you always were better at hiding than fighting. They stepped into the probate courtroom. Alan stood at the far end, pressed between his lawyer and one too many assistants, a smirk barely contained. "Well, well," he drawled, sharp as an icicle, "the famous explorer returns. Find any ghosts in those rotting floors." She stood tall, folder in hand. The bailiff called order. The judge eyed all three. "Present your evidence, Miss Pike." She opened the folder, letting the originals fan out, trust certificates, signed deeds, Catherine's letter. Alan's lawyer lunged for the judge's podium. "Objection, this is a fabrication. The property was sealed, no one could have." Marissa cut in, voice firm despite the quiver. "There's a concealed wing behind a false wall at the orphanage, sealed since 1943. My key opened it. All these documents were preserved inside with photographs proving location and condition. The police have a copy." Alan's eyes flicked, hunting for backup. None came. The judge leaned closer. "Mr. Pike, do you have any evidence these documents are false?" Alan scrambled, hissing at his counsel. His lawyer barked, We need time to evaluate provenance." Frey pressed forward. "We request immediate acceptance given the timestamp photographs, the police notification, and the original trust's unbroken seal. If Alan Pike forged any current holdings, a criminal review is warranted." Alan scowled at Marissa. "You're in over your head, Pike. I'll have you out in cuffs before noon," he spat. Marissa stepped forward, heart roiling. She caught his glare with steady calm, recalling every slight, every chuckle in the conference room. "Go ahead, call them. I called first. The difference is my proof doesn't burn." For a breath, the room fell silent. Alan's face slid from rage to dawning fear. Judge Dalton turned to the bailiff. "Take the folder into custody. Secure police review. Mr. Pike, you are prohibited from accessing any estate proceedings or transferring assets until this is resolved." Alan protested, but his voice collapsed into stuttered shouts. Marissa's knees wobbled, but she held her ground, lantern light in her memory flickering. "I never wanted any of this ruined place," Alan snapped, desperate. "Maybe not," she replied, voice quiet but unyielding, "but I'm standing in it now." The judge's hammer sounded, crisp against old wood. The sheriff entered, badge glinting, to escort Alan out as the courtroom hummed. News cameras outside caught only his downturned face and the rumors spinning out from the courthouse steps. Marissa sat, breathing as if for the first time in years. Alan, denied bail pending investigation, was exposed across every Montana news channel. Over weeks, forensic teams recovered the entirety of Catherine Pike's records from the orphanage's sealed wing, confirming the timeline and names. State police issued arrest warrants for Alan and his associates for financial fraud, theft by deception, and the attempted destruction of evidence, stacking up years of prison exposure. His mother's trust was immediately restored per the recovered deeds, cutting his share to nothing. The county, meanwhile, rallied around Marissa. Local press for once told the story straight: the orphan girl with the battered coat, the cousin who underestimated everything but her spine. School teachers who'd once pitied her sent warm messages through town hall. Volunteers offered to help restore the children's home, a fresh chapter. Months later, sitting inside a sunlit corridor of the newly cleared orphanage, Marissa unpacked the last dusty crate in silence broken only by faint traffic outside. She pressed her palm to the cool stone, sighed, and allowed herself a smile growing broad as bright. If there's a lesson tucked behind the plaster of old walls, it's this. The things you survive, starvation, betrayal, impossible odds, teach you how to defend what can't defend itself. The past doesn't yield up its secrets for nothing, but if you chase the truth through numb hands and raw fear, sometimes you bring yourself home. If you've ever wondered what you'd risk for the life you should have had, remember Marissa's story and look closer at the places everyone long abandoned. Sometimes what's lost isn't gone. It's just waiting for someone to look back one more time. They found her late April peeling paint chips off a sash window in the main hall. Sunlight notched through slats, drawing gold on her hands. The orphanage had a different sound these days, less echo, more purpose. Hammering from volunteers working the second-floor dormitory, laughter nodded with hope. Every footfall reminded Marissa, this place wasn't empty, not anymore. A knock at the newly hung front door startled her. She dusted off her palms and called out, "Just a sec." There stood Olivia Lake, her old caseworker, cheeks flushed beneath a mop of steel curls, holding a battered file box with Marissa's name on a neon sticker. "They said you'd be somewhere impossible to find," Olivia grinned, stepping into the porch light. "Guess I shouldn't be surprised." Marissa wrapped her in a shaky hug. "Been a long time," she said, voice fluttering with memory. Olivia set the file box down on the mosaic tile. "Thought you might want these." Her eyes lingered on the new coat of paint over the archway at the growing stacks of bricks out back. "You're really doing it." Marissa tented trembling fingers above the box. Inside, reports from her endless shuffles, old-school photos, the childhood artwork nobody claimed. A purple crayon self-portrait was paperclipped on top, scrawled, "My home." She laughed and nearly started crying. "You kept all this. You're the reason I do what I do. I always hoped, well, I hoped you'd get back here one day." Olivia's smile faded, serious now. "You know, people are saying it's a miracle you found the trust documents, that you didn't run." Then, after a beat, "If you'd rather walk away, nobody would blame you." Marissa shook her head. "All those years I thought I was running, but every step just looped back here." She gestured at the peeling murals and window panes gleaming with spring melt. "This place, Olivia, it's not finished. I'm not finished." Olivia nodded. "If you want a board of advisors, I know a few good people. Social workers, grant writers. You built an army without realizing it." A slow warmth replaced that cold pit in Marissa's chest. "Let's do it then. Real outreach, real work, not just fresh drywall." Outside, kids in neon vests darted by, shrieking with the joy only muddy spring can conjure. She watched them, remembering nights when hope was a myth printed in library books. Not now, not for them, if she could help it. The next weeks bunched in a kind of feverish energy. Headlines blared Alan Pike sentenced to 7 years, heir apparent cleared by hidden trust. Donations arrived, paint, books, a check from some New England charity glinting with zeros. People sent emails remembering Christmases 20 years old or offering bunk beds carved by hand. Every scrap mattered. Marissa appointed Olivia her right hand with a promise. "If I ever get too cold, you call me back. Don't let me wall up." They laughed, but the pact was real. They set up folding chairs on the sun porch for the inaugural board meeting. 6 new faces, 1 ancient coffee urn, and blueprints lapping at everyone's knees. "So what's the vision?" asked Theo, an architect who spent weekends hauling scrap wood from Billings. Marissa blew on her hands to steady herself, meeting every eye. "Not just a shelter," she said. "A place that listens, that gives kids what foster care never gave me, roots and a reason to believe they aren't just passing through somebody else's discarded dream." A firm nod. "And never locked doors, not again." A chorus of "hear, hear," and scribbled notes. Someone cracked a joke about painting the annex lavender, laughter rolling out with sunbeams. Days blurred. She led crews scraping ancient walls, cracked through stained glass to fix panes, climbed ladders she once feared as a kid. Every discovery was a memory: pressed violets between ledger pages, a paper chain from the 4th of July, tooth marks on an old crib. Sometimes, in quiet moments after dusk, she roamed the halls, letting the hush settle on her shoulders. If ghosts lingered, they meant her no harm. Each evening before locking up, she read a page from her grandmother's letter, tucked inside a new frame on her office shelf. Catherine's voice, distant but unbreakable in her mind: "They will try to cheat you. Let them try." Late one Thursday, her phone buzzed. Private number. Expecting some vendor or another bureaucrat, she answered with a resigned, Clearfield Center, Marissa Pike speaking. The voice carried a brittle warmth. "Still picking up tools, I see." Something in Marissa's chest stuttered. "Mom." Her tongue fumbled the word, infrequent as a comet. Sophia Pike sounded older, or maybe just exhausted. "I read about the trial," she said quietly. "About everything. You did all right." 100 names for anger and longing warred in Marissa's mind. Silence, then. "You could have called before." Long pause, only the hum of the town at night. "I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. I don't have anything left that belongs to you except stories you probably don't want." Sophia sounded smaller now. "But if you want me to visit, I'll come, just to see the place, nothing else." Marissa's knuckles ached where she gripped the phone. "You don't owe me," she began, but the lie wouldn't pass. "Come if you want, it's unlocked now. You didn't even have a key, did you?" A soft, surprised laugh. "No, never did." They agreed a few days. As Marissa hung up, the sense wasn't quite hope, wasn't fear either, just possibility, sharp and unknown. The next morning, Marissa ducked into town, grabbing coffee and a bag of still warm scones. Community members flagged her down. At the post office, the clerk winked. "That orphanage looks better every damn day, honey. You keep going." Back across the field, Marissa found her mother's silver sedan parked askew on the grass. Mud spattered up one door. Sophia stood at the edge of the steps, clutching a reusable shopping bag and a weary look. For a moment, neither moved. Then, with no flourish, just old muscle memory, Marissa unlocked the front door, letting them both inside. They stood by the check-in desk, staring up at the new glass ornament Marissa had rehung just last week in the old place of honor. Sophia cleared her throat. "I always thought, I thought this place made people harder, but it's gentle now. Are you really going to keep it running?" "That's the plan," Marissa offered a smile she half meant, half hoped would come true. "It's for kids like me, like you maybe." "Never really knew what I wanted when I left," Sophia admitted, twisting the bag handle. "I didn't think any home would let me back." Marissa turned her badge over in her palm. "Not all doors stay locked, even if the keys get lost." Around them, paint caught the sun, glinting over blank walls, waiting for the next handprint, the next scrawl of a name. They settled on a hallway bench, splitting scones wordlessly. Sophia pointed at a patch of wall where pencil measurings traced faded years. "That's you?" she asked, tapping one line, dated 2007. Marissa nodded, grinning. "I marked it so nobody could forget." Sophia's eyes brimmed. "Nobody will, not now." When Sophia left later that afternoon, they hugged awkwardly. No forgiveness, not yet, just a thread knotted between present and past. Marissa watched the sedan disappear, the field shimmering with green lances of new grass. Back inside, she opened the file box Olivia had brought. She leafed through court dates and old drawings, landed on her 8-year-old self's shaky handwriting. "Welcome home," it read under a rough heart. That night she sat on the orphanage steps, stars blinking over the reborn roof. Behind her, voices drifted, a caretaker's whistle, kids giggling over a game. Her phone chimed, a newsletter update from Three Rivers Tech offering rolling admissions. She reread Catherine's letter, the one rescued from dust and darkness. "You found your way home when others wanted you lost. What I could never tell you outright is this. In 1943, the Pike Trust was stolen, hidden in plain sight. Only this room, sealed since the war, holds the truth. If you have to fight, you'll know who's with you." Marissa smiled, knees drawn to her chest. Owl calls folded over twilight, and she felt it, solid, urgent, alive. Not a ruin, not a myth, but a place beginning again. One final time, she looked back at the stained glass above the entry, catching the last gold fire of sun. The stories weren't finished. She would write new ones for the children who hadn't arrived yet, and for each lost name she'd reclaimed. Home wasn't what she thought. It was what she built, stone by stone, memory by memory, hope laid into every wall. And this time, no one was getting through the door by force or by fraud. The lock turned gently in the clean night. Tomorrow would bring new voices, new scuffs in the floor, the promise of another beginning. She would be ready. She already was. From somewhere in the house, a child's laugh pealed faint and bright, then vanished down the corridors. Marissa breathed it in, letting it settle the last restless ache in her chest. She slid her hand along the rail, feeling the knot in the wood she'd carved her initials into decades before, bruised and hidden right beneath the varnish. For a second, she traced them now, MP, steady and sure. A scatter of footsteps echoed into the entryway. A pair of siblings, faces new to her but already unwinding shy smiles. Behind them, Olivia called, "Marissa, you're wanted out back. There's consensus on the paint color for the garden shed. You'll never guess." Theo stuck his head around the door jamb, smudged with lavender primer. "Unanimous, Pike. They say it hides the dandelions." Marissa's laugh, real and ringing, rolled against the old lintel. She set down her mug, rising into the warmth of electric light. "If you can't beat the weeds," she called back, "make them art." The kids darted past her, shoes thumping unevenly, voices tumbling over one another with plans for the playground, for flowers, for birthdays they'd never had in one place. Olivia plucked a sticky note off Marissa's sleeve on her way by, all brisk efficiency. "We're behind on thank you calls," she murmured, "but ahead on courage." Marissa nodded, savoring it. "That's good enough for today." She stepped outside beneath a faint wash of stars. The garden was a patchwork of early color, volunteers busy staking trellises. Someone had painted a sign, "Welcome Home," block letters stacked crooked as an eager promise. Alan's shadow, once sharp at the edge of every dream, was fading, history now, boxed and filed for the authorities. The wounds he'd left in the walls would heal faster than the ones in her memory, but each day made them softer to the touch. "Marissa," it was Olivia's voice, quieter, she turned. "Yeah." Olivia smiled, eyes bright in the dusk. "The board wants you to say something before the pizza's gone. Maybe," she hesitated, then added gently, "tell them why you stayed." Marissa watched the windows filling with gold, heard laughter trail from every side, and for a moment let the question fill her up until it didn't hurt anymore. She squared her shoulders. "I stayed," she called back, "so nobody else has to wonder if they belong, so nobody else feels lost, so we remember what's worth fighting for even when it scares us." Applause fluttered from the porch, but it was the hush afterward that meant everything. That rare, rich quiet when all that remained was belonging. Above, the windows glowed against the dark. Tomorrow would bring bruises and bills, paint chips and paperwork. But tonight, surrounded by voices and hope, Marissa Pike was home. For good.